Hello everyone, it's me Dalita and today I would like to show you how to print a triangle of stars by the help of recursive functions. So at first let me define the problem. So the problem is that I need to print a triangle of stars by the following shape. So this is the sample of the shape. And later, if I want to call the function triangle stars with an argument 5, I should get this shape on my screen. So at first, let's analyze this. And what we see here are the number of rows which are our original input. Also, we see number of stars per row and number of spaces because obviously we require number of spaces to be printed in every line in order to obtain this figure. Because without spaces, having each star in the beginning of every line, the shape will not be as it requires. So we consider to print both spaces and stars in every line. So here we have 5 number of lines, and in each line, the number of stars and the number of spaces vary. So now let's formulate this and understand how the number of stars and the number of spaces change while we have to print this triangle. So in the console, this triangle will be printed from the top to the bottom. And from that we get that this is the first line, this is the second, this is the third, this is the fourth, and this is the fifth. So as you can see, in the first line we have only 1 star. In the second line, we have 3 stars, then we have 5 stars, then we have 7, and in the last line, we have 9 stars. So from this, we easily understand that the number of lines and the number of stars have the following equation. So the number of stars is equal to the number of lines multiplied by 2 minus 1. For example, if I'm in the line 4, I can easily determine that the number of stars will be 7. Here we are, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this is how we determine the number of stars. And now let's determine the number of spaces. So this is a little bit tricky because in order to count the number of spaces, we need to go from the bottom to the top. Now imagine if I have this figure. In here, I require only 1 space, and in this line, 2 spaces. This means being in the first line doesn't mean you always require the same number of spaces. Mainly, the number of floors determine the number of spaces, which means higher we go from the bottom, we require more spaces. For example, if we only go 2 levels up, we require 2 spaces, and if we go 4 levels up, here we are, we require 4 spaces, 1, 2, 3, 4. And if we consider this as the ground level. So from this we understand that the number of spaces is equal to the number of floor. For example, if I'm in the ground level, I don't even require any spaces, and if I go up 1 level, I will require only 1 space. And now let's think about recursive functions. So in this case, we have 2 main functionalities. The first function will draw the lines, and the other one will draw the triangle, which consists of lines. And now let's see how can a recursive function draw a line. But at first, let me mark this as a comment. And save this function as a JavaScript file to highlight the syntax. So constant drawLine is a function that takes 2 parameters, the character that I want to print and the number of characters that I need to print. And And our recursive function should always have a terminating condition. And our terminating condition is when our number equals 0. That's where I don't want any stars to be returned. Beside that, then I want to return the character appended by the same function with the same character and with a smaller segment. So now let's test our function by calling it. With star character, and let's say for 5 times. Let me run this in terminal. Yes, we have 5 stars. But what if I want to append spaces before the stars? I need to write draw line with space, and let's say for 3 times. So this one is a string, and this is also a string. So with a plus sign, I will append them. Now let's call it again in terminal. Yes, we have 3 spaces and 5 stars in a line. So this part is completed. So here comes the main part of the problem, where I have to draw a triangle by calling this draw line each time by changing its parameters. So how to draw a triangle recursively? Each time I should draw a smaller triangle in the top and then add 1 baseline in the bottom. So now let's start writing that function. So constant triangle stars is a function that takes the number of lines. But remember, not only the number of lines are important, but also the number of spaces are important. So the other parameter that our function takes is the floor number in order to tell our draw line how many spaces we require at the moment. And our terminating condition is when our lines are equal to 0 and we are just returning. We are not doing anything else. So first I want to draw the top of the triangle, and then I want to draw the last line which I am currently in. So I call triangle stars with lines -1, which is the smaller portion, and with floor number +1. So the number of lines are decreasing and the floor number is increasing as I go to the top. So when I'm done, then I want to print the stars for which I have the function. So I'm writing draw line with star, and here we have the formula for the number of stars, which is number of lines multiplied by 2 and -1. But remember, we also require spaces to be printed before the stars. So I'm going to write the same function with space, and here we have another formula for the number of spaces, which is the floor number. So now let's call our function and see how it works. But at first, let me delete this. And I'm starting from the floor 0. Let me run this in terminal. Yay! Yes, it's so beautiful. It works very well. And now let's try with another number. and run it again. So beautiful. So to make this a little more fancy, what I do is that I don't want my user of this function to remember the floor, because we know what the floor means here, but the user of this function might not know what floor is. So I'm going to use the coolest part in JavaScript language, where I cannot actually pass any parameter and I can let my function decide what to do if nothing is passed initially. So I'm going to say if the floor number is not passed, which means it is undefined. So I'm going to assume that the floor number is 0. So we just want our user to pass the number of lines. So the floor number initially has no value, that's why I initialized it to 0. And from this moment, our floor number has a value and it will be passed to our function. So let's run this again and see what happens. Yes, it works! Oh, thanks very much for watching and have a good day. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.